The sound of heels against marble stopped the moment the door opened. Adrian didn't raise his voice, didn't step forward, didn't even blink. Vanessa dropped to her knees before he said a single word. But the truth was, he had already decided long before she begged. The city never slept, but from the 47th floor of their Manhattan penthouse, it almost looked like it did. The noise softened into a distant hum. The chaos turned into a glittering pattern of lights, orderly, controlled, beautiful. Just like Adrian Cole's life, or at least that was the illusion. Adrian stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, a glass of untouched bourbon in his hand. His reflection stared back at him, sharp suit, composed expression, a man who had built everything from discipline and precision. A man who didn't make mistakes. Behind him, Vanessa's laughter echoed faintly from the bedroom, light, effortless, familiar. And yet, it didn't feel like it belonged to him anymore. "Adrian," her voice called out. Sweet and practiced. "Are you even listening?" He turned slowly. Vanessa leaned against the doorway, wrapped in silk, her hair falling perfectly over one shoulder, her smile effortless in the way that used to disarm him. She looked like the kind of woman people envied. And she knew it. "I asked if you're coming to the Harper event on Friday," she repeated, walking toward him. "Everyone's going to be there. Everyone." Meaning people who mattered, people who watched, people who judged. Adrian set the glass down. "I have a meeting," he replied calmly. Vanessa tilted her head, studying him. "You always have a meeting lately, and you always have somewhere else to be." The words hung in the airlight, almost casual, but something underneath them shifted. Vanessa's smile flickered, just for a second. "I have a life too, Adrian," she said, her tone sharpening slightly. "Or is that not allowed?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past her, picking up his phone from the table. There it was again. That feeling. Not anger, not yet. Just awareness. Like noticing a crack in glass that had always been there but suddenly couldn't be ignored. "I didn't say that," he said finally. "Then what are you saying?" she pressed, crossing her arms. Adrian looked at her directly now. "I'm saying you've been different." Silence. For a brief moment, something unreadable passed through her eyes. Then she laughed, a little too quickly. "Amazing," Vanessa said, shaking her head. "You barely look at me for weeks, and suddenly I'm the problem." There it was. Deflection. Clean. Immediate. Controlled. Adrian almost admired it. "I didn't say you were the problem," he replied evenly. "You didn't have to." She turned away, walking back toward the bedroom. "Maybe if you spent less time at the office and more time actually being a husband, you wouldn't feel so suspicious." The word lingered. Suspicious. Adrian stood still, because that was exactly what he was, but not in the way she thought. Not emotional, not impulsive. Measured, quiet, patient. That night, after Vanessa fell asleep, Adrian sat alone in the living room, his laptop open but untouched. Instead, his gaze rested on her phone, left casually on the counter, unlocked, careless, or confident. He didn't move toward it immediately, because crossing that line meant something. It meant he was no longer trusting, no longer assuming, no longer blind. After a long moment, he stood, each step deliberate, controlled. He picked up the phone, paused, then unlocked the screen. Messages, notifications, nothing unusual at first glance. But Adrian didn't look for obvious. He looked for patterns, gaps, timing, and then he saw it. A contact with no name, just a number. Thread muted. His thumb hovered for half a second, then tapped. The screen filled with messages, short, careful, but intimate in the spaces between words. "Same time tomorrow, he won't be home. Missed you." Adrian didn't react, didn't breathe differently, didn't flinch. Because in that exact moment, everything became clear. Not chaotic, not emotional. Clear. He locked the phone, set it back exactly where it had been, and sat down again. This time he picked up his own phone, scrolled through his contacts, and selected a name. "Daniel, I need you to look into someone for me." A pause on the other end. Then, business or personal? Adrian's eyes drifted toward the hallway where Vanessa slept. Both. He ended the call. The city lights flickered outside, unchanged, unaware. And inside that penthouse, something had already begun to collapse, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, irreversibly, because Adrian Cole wasn't a man who reacted. He was a man who decided, and tonight he had taken the first step. The shift didn't happen all at once. It never does. It was subtle, so subtle, that anyone less observant than Adrian Cole might have dismissed it as coincidence. A late meeting here, a missed call there. A change in tone that could easily be explained away by stress fatigue or the ordinary erosion of marriage. But Adrian didn't believe in coincidences. He believed in patterns. And Vanessa was becoming one. It started with time. Vanessa had always been social gallery openings, charity events, private dinners with women who smiled too much and listened too little. It was part of the world they lived in. But now her schedule had become unpredictable. Another event, Adrian asked one evening, loosening his tie as he stepped into the kitchen. Vanessa stood by the counter scrolling through her phone. Just a quick one. I told you. You didn't, he said calmly. She didn't look up. I mentioned it last week. You didn't. Now she looked at him, and there it was again, that flicker, that microsecond where her expression recalibrated. Then she smiled, soft, dismissive, effortless. You've been working too much, Adrian, she said lightly. You forget things. It was almost convincing. Almost. He didn't argue. That was the first thing Vanessa didn't notice. Adrian had stopped arguing. Not because he believed her, but because he was listening more than he was speaking, watching more than reacting. 3 nights later, she came home at 1:17 a.m. Adrian knew the exact time because he was awake, not in bed, but seated in the dark living room, the city lights casting shadows across his face. Vanessa froze slightly when she saw him, just for a moment. Then she recovered. You're still up, she asked, slipping off her heels. Couldn't sleep. A beat. How was the event? Boring, she said, instantly walking past him. You didn't miss anything. Adrian's gaze followed her. You were gone for 6 hours, she shrugged, already halfway down the hallway. After party. With who? Who? Now she stopped, slowly turned around, and sighed. Adrian? Seriously? Her tone wasn't defensive. It was offended, as if he had crossed a line. I'm asking a question, and I'm wondering why it sounds like an accusation. There it was. The pivot. Clean, precise. Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair. Is it? Vanessa crossed her arms, her expression tightening just enough to signal irritation, but not enough to admit guilt. You've been acting strange lately, she said. Distant, cold, and now this. This interrogation. The word hung between them, heavy, deliberate. Adrian studied her, every detail, the slight tension in her jaw, the way her fingers curled just a little too tightly against her arms, the controlled breathing. She wasn't relaxed. She was performing relaxation. I asked who you were with, he said quietly. And I told you, she snapped. Friends. Which ones? Silence. A fraction too long. Then, oh my God. Adrian. She laughed, shaking her head. Do I need to submit a guest list now? He didn't respond, didn't smile, didn't move. And something in that stillness unsettled her. Because this wasn't the man she was used to. This wasn't the version of Adrian who let things go to keep the peace. This was someone else. Someone watching. You're overthinking this, Vanessa said, finally her voice softer now. Adjusting, adapting. It was just a night out. 6 hours. Yes, 6 hours. She repeated, irritation creeping back in. Do you want me to apologize for having a life? I want you to answer the question. I did. No, Adrian said calmly. You didn't. Their eyes locked, and for a brief second the truth hovered between them, unspoken, dangerous. Vanessa looked away first, exhaled sharply. I'm tired, she said, dismissing him with a wave of her hand. I'm not doing this tonight. She turned and walked away, conversation over, control regained, or at least that's what she thought, but Adrian didn't follow, didn't push, didn't escalate, because the argument itself was no longer the point. The reaction was, and hers had been, informative. The next morning, everything was normal again. Vanessa moved through the kitchen like nothing had happened, coffee, brewing phone in hand. Soft music playing in the background. Do you want breakfast? She asked casually. Adrian watched her from across the room. How was the after-party? She didn't miss a beat. Still on that, she smiled faintly. Wow, I'm curious. You're suspicious? She corrected. He didn't deny it. That was new too. Vanessa placed a cup of coffee in front of him. Her fingers lingered just a second too long on the rim. A subtle gesture, softening, redirecting. Adrian, she said gently. If something's bothering you, just say it. I am. No. She shook her head, sitting down across from him. You're circling it. That's not like you. He held her gaze. You've been lying to me. Silence. The air shifted instantly. Sharp. Cold. Then Vanessa laughed. Not softly, not nervously, confidently. Wow, she said, leaning back. That's a serious accusation. I didn't accuse. I stated. Oh, you stated. She raised an eyebrow. Based on what exactly? Adrian didn't answer. Because this wasn't the moment. Not yet. And that frustrated her more than any evidence could. You don't get to throw something like that out and then just sit there, she said, her tone tightening. If you have something to say it. I will. When I'm done observing. The words landed harder than he intended. Because they were honest. And honesty at the wrong time was dangerous. Vanessa stared at him, really stared this time, trying to read him, trying to understand what he knew, what he suspected, what he had. And for the first time, there was something behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. Not annoyance, not control, but fear. Small, fleeting, but real. Adrian, she said slowly, choosing each word with care, you're creating a problem where there isn't one. Am I? Yes. Then prove it. Another pause. Longer this time. More fragile. I don't have to prove anything, she said, finally standing up. I haven't done anything wrong. He nodded once, as if accepting that, but his eyes said something else entirely. That night, Adrian didn't check her phone. He didn't need to, because now it wasn't just a suspicion. It was a pattern. And patterns always lead somewhere. Across the room, Vanessa typed quickly on her phone, her back turned, her voice low when she finally spoke. I might be late again tomorrow, she said casually. Adrian didn't look up from his laptop. Of course you will. She froze, just slightly, then forced a laugh. You're impossible lately. Am I? She didn't answer. Because something in his tone had changed. Not louder, not angrier, just final. And in that moment, Vanessa realized something she hadn't considered before. Adrian wasn't chasing the truth. He was waiting for it. And when a man like him waits, it means he already knows where to look. Adrian didn't believe in emotional confrontations, not because he was incapable of feeling, but because he understood something most people didn't. Emotion clouds precision. And right now, precision was everything. 3 days after the conversation in the kitchen, Adrian sat in a quiet office 2 blocks away from his firm in unremarkable building, with no signage, no presence, no traceable identity. Exactly the kind of place that dealt in truths people didn't want discovered. Across from him sat Daniel Reeves, a private investigator with a reputation built on discretion and results. Mid-40s, composed, observant, the kind of man who spoke less than he knew. You're sure you want to do this? Daniel asked, folding his hands on the table. Adrian didn't hesitate. Yes, because once I start, Daniel continued, you don't get to unknow what I find. A pause, a test. Adrian met his gaze evenly. I'm not here to confirm innocence. Daniel studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. All right. Tell me everything. Adrian didn't give him everything. He gave him patterns, late nights, behavioral shifts, the number with no name, and one more detail. A man named Lucas Grant. Adrian said, his voice steady. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. The Lucas Grant? Yes, that changed things. Lucas Grant wasn't just anyone. He was a rising figure in corporate investments, charismatic, dangerously ambitious. More importantly, he had crossed paths with Adrian before. Business dinners, strategic partnerships, conversations built on mutual benefit, trust at least professionally. Interesting? Daniel murmured. You think your wife is involved with him? I don't think, Adrian replied. I observe. Daniel leaned back slightly, a faint smirk forming. All right then, he said. Let's observe properly. The investigation began that same day, quietly, efficiently, invisible. At home, nothing changed, and that was the point. Adrian didn't confront Vanessa, didn't question her again, didn't check her phone. He returned to routine morning coffee, late office hours, minimal conversation. To Vanessa, it looked like retreat, like surrender. And she relaxed. You've been quiet lately, she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter watching him. Busy, Adrian replied. She studied him for a moment, searching for something, suspicion, anger, anything. But there was nothing. Just calm, just distance, and somehow that unsettled her more. "Good," she said, finally turning away. "I was starting to think you didn't trust me." Adrian didn't respond, because trust was no longer part of the equation. 3 days later, Daniel sent the first file. No explanation, no commentary, just data. Adrian opened it in his office, the glow of the screen reflecting in his eyes. Photographs, time-stamped, clear. Vanessa, leaving a restaurant on the Upper East Side, not alone. Lucas Grant walked beside her, too close for business, too familiar for coincidence. Another image, his hand at the small of her back. Guiding. Possessive. Adrian's expression didn't change, but his grip on the mouse tightened, just slightly. Next file. Text logs, not full messages, just metadata. But enough. Repeated contact, late hours. Gaps that aligned perfectly with Vanessa's events. Pattern confirmed. Adrian leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, not to escape, but to process, to organize, to understand. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It was structure, timing, consistency, carelessness hidden inside confidence. That night, Vanessa came home earlier than usual. Adrian was already there, sitting in the living room, waiting, not for her, for himself. To react or not, he murmured under his breath. Vanessa glanced at him. What? Nothing. She hesitated, then walked closer. "You've been different," she said again, softer this time, concerned, or pretending to be. "Have I?" "Yes," she nodded. "But I think it's a good thing." Adrian looked at her, really looked this time, at the woman he had built a life with. The woman who now existed in two versions, the one in front of him and the one in the photographs. "Why?" he asked. Vanessa smiled faintly. "Because you stopped questioning everything she said. It feels like you trust me again." A silence followed, long enough to matter. Then Adrian nodded slowly. "Maybe I do." She smiled wider, relieved, victorious. And in that moment, Adrian understood something critical. She didn't think she was being caught. She thought she had regained control. The next morning, Daniel called. "I've got more," he said. Adrian stepped into a private conference room, closing the door behind him. "Go ahead. They're not just meeting occasionally." Daniel continued. "It's consistent, structured, same locations, same days." Adrian listened, still, focused. "And there's something else," Daniel added. "Financial overlap." That caught his attention. "Explain." "Lucas has been funneling money through a secondary account, nothing illegal on the surface, but questionable. And your wife's name appears in proximity." "Proximity not directly tied," Daniel clarified, "but close enough to raise flags, joint transactions, shared expenses that don't make sense." Adrian's mind moved quickly now, connecting, expanding. This wasn't just an affair, it was integration. "Keep digging," Adrian said. "I will," Daniel replied. "But Adrian, you should prepare yourself." "For what?" "For the possibility that this isn't just personal." Adrian's gaze hardened slightly. "It never is." That evening, Adrian returned home earlier than usual. Vanessa was in the bedroom, door slightly open, her voice soft, barely audible. "I told you he suspects nothing," she whispered. Adrian stopped, didn't move, didn't breathe. "He's distant, but that's normal. It's actually better this way." A pause. Then a quiet laugh. Soft, intimate. "I miss you too." Silence. Adrian stepped back, carefully, deliberately, and walked away. He didn't confront her, didn't open the door, didn't let her know he had heard, because now there was no doubt, no ambiguity, no illusion left to protect. Later that night, Vanessa slipped into bed beside him. Close, familiar, her hand resting lightly against his chest, a gesture she had used 100 times before. Comfort, connection, ownership. Adrian stared at the ceiling, unmoving, unresponsive, because for the first time, that touch meant nothing. "You're quiet again," she murmured sleepily. "I'm thinking." About what? Adrian turned his head slightly, looking at her in the dark. "About truth." She shifted beside him, tension returning. Even in the dark, he could feel it. Truth about what she asked carefully. Adrian held her gaze, even though she couldn't fully see his expression, about how much of it people can hide before it destroys them. A long silence followed, heavy, uneasy. Vanessa laughed softly, but it wasn't natural this time. "You're being dramatic," she whispered. "Am I?" "Yes." Adrian nodded slowly, then turned away, ending the conversation. Because the truth was, he wasn't being dramatic. He was being patient, and patience was the most dangerous weapon he had. Across the city, Daniel continued digging, deeper, further, uncovering layers Vanessa didn't even know existed. And Adrian was no longer asking questions. He was building a case, piece by piece, silently, relentlessly. Because when the moment came, when everything surfaced, when the illusion shattered, he wouldn't need to shout, he wouldn't need to argue, he wouldn't even need to explain. All he would need was the truth. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. 47 floors, a slow ascent through glass and steel through a city that glittered like nothing was wrong, like betrayal didn't exist behind closed doors. Adrian stood alone inside, one hand in his coat pocket, the other loosely holding his phone. The screen was dark now, but minutes earlier it had lit up with a message from Daniel. They're there, now. No explanation needed, no hesitation. Adrian had simply left his office, ignored the assistant calling after him, and walked out into the night with the kind of calm that only comes when the outcome is already decided. The elevator doors opened. Silence greeted him. No music. No movement, just the soft ambient hum of the penthouse. Controlled, expensive, pristine. And then a sound. Faint. From down the hallway. A laugh, low, intimate, familiar, but not meant for him. Adrian closed the door behind him quietly. No rush, no sudden movement. Each step deliberate as he walked toward the bedroom. The closer he got, the clearer the voices became. Vanessa's, soft, breathless, and a man's voice lower, confident. Comfortable, too comfortable. "You said he'd be late," the man murmured. "He always is." Vanessa replied, her voice laced with something Adrian hadn't heard directed at him in months. "You worry too much." A quiet laugh followed. Then the sound of movement, fabric shifting, a kiss. Adrian stopped outside the door, just for a second, not because he needed confirmation, but because this was the moment where illusion officially died. Everything before had been suspicion, evidence, calculation, but this was reality, unfiltered, irreversible. He pushed the door open. Time didn't slow down. It didn't freeze. It simply shifted. Vanessa turned first. Her expression changed in stages: confusion, recognition, shock, and then fear. Adrian Lucas moved next, stepping back instantly, his composure cracking for the first time. "Cole, this isn't—" "Don't," Adrian said. Calm, quiet, enough to stop both of them. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like the walls themselves were watching. Vanessa scrambled off the bed, grabbing the nearest piece of clothing, wrapping it around herself like it could undo what had already been seen. "This isn't what it looks like," she said quickly, her voice trembling but controlled enough to try. Adrian didn't respond. He simply looked at her, then at Lucas, then back at her. "Then what is it?" he asked. No anger, no raised voice, just a question. And somehow, that made it worse. Vanessa swallowed, her mind racing, reaching for anything. It's not what you think," she repeated, stepping closer to him. "We were just talking." Adrian's gaze flickered briefly to the bed, then back to her. "Talking." "Yes," she nodded quickly. "You came in at the wrong moment. It looks bad, I know, but it's not Vanessa." Her name, spoken calmly, cut through her words. She stopped, because she recognized that tone. It wasn't questioning. It wasn't emotional. It was final. Adrian reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his phone, tapped the screen once, and turned it toward her. A photograph, clear, undeniable, her and Lucas, outside the restaurant, his hand on her back, her smile, intimate, unguarded. Vanessa's breath caught, but only for a second, because instinct took over. "That doesn't mean anything," she said quickly. "We were meeting about another swipe, another image, a different night, closer, more obvious," her body leaning into his, her hand on his chest. That's taken out of context, she insisted, her voice rising slightly now. "You don't understand. Another swipe. A video this time. Short, but devastating. The two of them entering a hotel, together. No distance, no ambiguity, silence. Heavy, crushing. Lucas stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Adrian, listen, this isn't—" "I told you not to speak," Adrian said without looking at him, and something in his tone made Lucas stop. Completely. Vanessa's composure cracked. "Not fully, but enough. You were spying on me," she demanded, anger flaring as a defense. "That's insane, Adrian. That's don't. One word. Sharp. Precise." And she froze. Adrian stepped closer now, not aggressively, but with purpose. "How long?" he asked. Vanessa shook her head immediately. "There's nothing to tell. This is being blown out of proportion." "How long, Vanessa?" Her eyes darted. To Lucas, back to Adrian, calculating, searching for an exit. "There's nothing to confess," she said more quietly now. "You're making this bigger than it is." Adrian held her gaze, unmoving, unblinking. Then he reached past her, picked up her phone from the nightstand, unlocked it. Effortless, familiar, and opened the message thread, the one she thought was hidden. He didn't show her immediately. He just read, silently, line after line, word after word, until he turned the screen toward her. Vanessa didn't need to read it. She knew exactly what was there. Her voice broke, then stopped, because there was nowhere left to go, no angle, no deflection, no manipulation strong enough to survive that moment. Her knees hit the floor before she realized she was falling. "Adrian, please," she whispered, her hands gripping the fabric of his coat. "I can explain. I can fix this. It didn't mean anything." He didn't move, didn't look down at her, didn't react to the contact, because inside, something had already shut off. "It meant enough," he said quietly, "for you to lie, repeatedly, strategically." Vanessa shook her head desperately. "I was scared." "Okay, I didn't know how to tell you. You've been distant so you replaced me." "No," she cried, grabbing his arm tighter. "No, that's not what this is. He doesn't matter. You matter. You're my husband, was." The word landed like a blade. Clean, irreversible. Vanessa froze. Completely. "No," she whispered. "No, you don't mean that I do." Adrian finally looked down at her, and what she saw in his eyes was worse than anger, worse than betrayal. It was absence. "I made the decision before I walked in," he said calmly. This just confirmed it. Her grip tightened, desperate. "You can't just decide that," she said, panic rising. "We have a life, a marriage. You don't throw that away over a mistake." "A mistake," Adrian repeated softly. "Yes." She nodded quickly. "Yes, it was a mistake. I'll end it, right now. I swear, you already did." She blinked, confused. What? Adrian stepped back, gently removing her hands from his coat. "When you chose him," he said, "you ended it." Behind them, Lucas stood frozen, silent, powerless. For the first time in his life, completely outmatched. Vanessa collapsed forward slightly, her hands falling uselessly to her lap. Tears now, real ones, uncontrolled. "Adrian, please," she whispered. "I'll do anything. Just don't walk away like this." He watched her for a long moment, taking in the image, memorizing it, not out of love, but out of closure. Then he turned, walked toward the door, and stopped, just briefly, without looking back. "You should start thinking about what comes next," he said. His voice was calm, measured, unshaken, "because I already have." The door closed behind him, softly, but the sound echoed like something breaking. Inside the room, Vanessa remained on her knees, breathing uneven, hands trembling, the weight of reality finally crushing down. No more lies, no more control, no more illusion, because the truth was she hadn't just been caught, she had been finished. And Adrian. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel relieved. He didn't even feel angry anymore. He felt nothing. And that was the most irreversible thing of all. The silence after betrayal is never empty. It's filled with questions no one wants to answer. Vanessa didn't sleep that night. She stayed on the bedroom floor long after Adrian walked out, her body frozen in the exact position where everything had collapsed. The city lights bled through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room, shadows that felt heavier, now suffocating. Lucas had left without a word, not even a goodbye. Just the quiet sound of a door closing behind him, as if distancing himself from the wreckage might somehow save him. It didn't. By morning, Vanessa had already begun rebuilding her version of reality. Because denial isn't just a reaction, it's a strategy. Adrian returned at exactly 8:12 a.m., same time as always, same composed expression, same controlled presence, as if nothing had happened. Vanessa stood in the kitchen when he walked in, dressed, perfectly put together, hair done, makeup flawless, the version of herself the world recognized. The version she believed still had power. "Adrian," she said softly. He didn't respond immediately. He set his keys down, removed his coat, walked past her, calm, untouched. "I think we need to talk." She continued, following him into the living room. "No," Adrian replied, sitting down. "We need the truth." The distinction hit harder than she expected, but she recovered quickly. "I told you the truth," she said, her tone steady. "You walked in on something that looked wrong, but it's not what you think." Adrian looked up, and that was enough to stop her. "Start from the beginning," he said. "Not loud, not aggressive, just inevitable." Vanessa hesitated, only for a second, then she exhaled and stepped forward. "It wasn't planned," she began. "Lucas and I were working closely. Things got complicated, emotional. I felt alone, Adrian. You weren't there. So it's my fault." The words were flat, sharp. "No," she said quickly. "That's not what I'm saying. I'm just explaining how it happened." "You said it wasn't what I think," Adrian interrupted. "Now it happened. Which one is it?" Her throat tightened, because the narrative was slipping, and he was controlling it. It was a mistake, she corrected, adjusting her tone. "Softer now, vulnerable. One that I regret." "How many times?" Silence. "A few," she said finally. "How many?" "Vanessa, I don't know, Count." The command landed like pressure against her chest. She swallowed. 5, maybe 6. Adrian held her gaze, unmoving. 8, he said. Her eyes widened. What 8 confirmed, he continued calmly. Different locations, different days, consistent timing. Her breath caught. Because now she understood. This wasn't suspicion. This was documentation. "You had someone follow me," she whispered. "I had someone observe facts." He corrected. "That's insane," she snapped suddenly, anger flaring as panic took over. "That's controlling Adrian. That's answer the question." His voice didn't rise, but it cut through hers instantly. Vanessa paced slightly now, her hands running through her hair. "You're not even trying to understand," she said, frustration bleeding into her tone. "You're just dissecting everything like it's some kind of case." "It is a case," she stopped. "What?" "A case of betrayal," Adrian said evenly. "And I want a full account. I'm your wife, not a defendant." "Right now," he replied, "there's no difference. That broke something. Not fully, but enough." "You're unbelievable," Vanessa said, shaking her head. "You act like you're perfect, like you've never neglected this marriage, like you didn't push me into this." Adrian stood, slowly, deliberately, and walked toward her, not aggressively, but with a presence that forced her to step back. "Say that again," he said quietly. She hesitated. But pride pushed her forward. "You weren't there," she repeated, her voice shaking now. "You were always working. Always distant. I felt invisible, and that justifies lying to me. I didn't know how to tell you, so you didn't. I was going to win silence." Adrian tilted his head slightly, studying her. Before or after the 9th time, her composure shattered. "Stop doing that," she snapped. "Stop turning this into numbers and facts like it doesn't matter emotionally. It matters precisely because it's factual." Vanessa's breathing became uneven now, her control slipping. "You're cold," she whispered. "That's the problem. You don't feel anything." Adrian didn't respond immediately, because that wasn't entirely wrong. "I felt everything," he said finally. "Before." A pause. "Now I just want clarity." Vanessa stared at him, searching, hoping, for something, anything, but there was nothing left to manipulate. "Did you love him?" Adrian asked. The question landed differently, deeper, more dangerous. Vanessa shook her head instantly. "No, too fast, too clean." Adrian stepped closer, close enough that she couldn't look away. "Think carefully," he said, "because this is the last time I ask." Her lips parted, closed. "Then I don't know," she admitted quietly. And that was the most honest thing she had said. Adrian nodded once, as if confirming something internally, then stepped back, distance restored. "Good," he said. Vanessa blinked, confused. "Good, yes," he replied. "Now we're finally dealing with truth." Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they weren't strategic. They were real. "Adrian, please," she whispered, stepping toward him. "We can fix this. I'll cut him off completely. I'll do whatever you want. Therapy, transparency, anything." He watched her, calm, detached. Too late. The words were quiet, but absolute. "No," she shook her head desperately. "No, you don't mean that. People make mistakes. Marriages survive worse than this. Not this one." "Why?" she cried. "Because you refused to try, because I already did." She froze. For months, Adrian continued, his voice steady. "I noticed. I waited. I gave you space to tell me the truth. A beat. You chose not to." Vanessa collapsed onto the couch, her body folding in on itself. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't want to lose you." Adrian's expression didn't change. "You lost me the moment you decided I was someone you could lie to." Silence filled the room. Heavy. Final. Vanessa looked up at him one last time, desperate, broken. "Is there anything I can do?" Adrian paused, not because he was considering it, but because he wanted his answer to be clear, unforgettable. "Yes," he said. Hope flickered in her eyes. "Fragile. Dangerous. Tell the truth," he continued. "All of it. No more manipulation, no more deflection, no more rewriting what happened. A step closer, one final time." Vanessa nodded quickly, clinging to that last thread. "I will. I promise. But understand this," Adrian added, and something in his tone made her breath stop. "It won't change the outcome." The hope in her eyes died instantly, because now she understood. This wasn't a conversation. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't a marriage being repaired. This was judgment, and Adrian had already delivered the verdict: revenge. Adrian believed was inefficient, too emotional, too impulsive, too loud. What he preferred was consequence, structured, measured, inevitable. 3 days after the confrontation, Adrian sat in his office overlooking Midtown Manhattan, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. The city looked the same, but his perspective had changed. Because now, this wasn't just about betrayal, it was about exposure. His phone buzzed once, a message from Daniel. "You need to see this. Attached a secured file." Adrian opened it without hesitation. Inside was everything he hadn't expected but immediately understood. Financial records, shell accounts, offshore transfers, and at the center of it all, Lucas Grant. Adrian leaned back slightly, scanning each document with precise attention. Transaction patterns, hidden layers, clean on the surface but deeply questionable beneath. Lucas wasn't just reckless in his personal life. He was arrogant in his professional one. And arrogance always left traces. A second document followed, this one smaller, simpler, but more dangerous. Vanessa's name, not directly tied but adjacent, luxury purchases, travel overlaps, expenses that didn't align with her known accounts. Adrian's jaw tightened just slightly, not from emotion, from confirmation. That afternoon, Daniel called. "You're looking at enough to raise serious questions," he said, "maybe more depending on how far you want to push it." "How far does it go?" Adrian asked. "Far enough to ruin him," Daniel replied, "if it's handled correctly." Adrian stood walking toward the window. Below him, the city moved without pause, unaware, always unaware. "And if it's not," he asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then it becomes noise." Adrian nodded to himself, because that was the difference. Noise fades. Truth doesn't. Prepare everything, Adrian said. Clean, verifiable, no speculation. "You're planning something public," Daniel observed. "Yes." A pause. "Corporate or personal?" Adrian's reflection stared back at him in the glass. Both. That evening, Adrian attended a board meeting at his firm. Lucas Grant was there, confident, composed, untouched. Adrian Lucas greeted him with a firm handshake, his smile perfectly controlled. "Good to see you." Adrian returned the handshake. Steady, measured. "Is it?" Lucas didn't flinch, didn't show a crack, because men like him didn't panic early. They panicked when it was too late. "Looking forward to Friday," Lucas continued. "The Harper investment event is going to be big." Adrian held his gaze. "I'm sure it will be." Friday, that was the stage. The Harper event wasn't just another corporate gathering. It was visibility, power, reputation condensed into one room. Investors, executives, media all watching, all evaluating. A place where perception became reality. Perfect. Later that night, Adrian returned home. Vanessa was in the living room, waiting. "You're still going to the Harper event, aren't you?" she asked carefully. Adrian set his keys down. "Yes." Relief flickered across her face, because in her mind that meant something. Normalcy, continuity, hope. "I'll be there too," she added quickly. "We should go together." Adrian looked at her, long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Of course," he said. She smiled, small, fragile, but real, because she thought she still had a place beside him. She didn't. Over the next 2 days, everything aligned. Daniel finalized the files. Adrian reviewed every detail, cross-checked every document, removed every possible weakness. No assumptions, no emotional language, just facts, emails, transaction records, surveillance timestamps, legal inconsistencies. And one more thing, a timeline. Clear, linear, impossible to deny. By Thursday night, the case was complete, not just against Lucas, but against the illusion itself. Vanessa tried one last time. She stood in the doorway of Adrian's study, her voice quieter now, less defensive, more human. "I ended it," she said. Adrian didn't look up from his laptop. "I know," she hesitated. "You know, yes," how Adrian finally looked at her. "Because he's already preparing to save himself." The words landed heavily. Vanessa's face paled slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," Adrian said calmly, "you were never the risk." A pause. "You were the liability." She stepped back as if struck, because deep down, she knew that was true. "Adrian, please," she whispered, "don't do something we can't undo." He closed his laptop slowly, stood, walked toward her. "You already did something we can't undo," he said quietly. Silence. "Friday," he continued, "just show up." Her heart began to race. Why Adrian held her gaze, unmoving, because you should be there when everything becomes real. The next night, the city would gather, the lights would shine, the room would be filled with power, wealth, influence. And in the center of it, Adrian would do what he had always done best, not react, but reveal. The Harper investment event was everything it was designed to be: elegant, controlled, impressive. A glass cathedral of wealth and influence perched above the city skyline. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors, while quiet conversations carried the weight of millions, sometimes billions of dollars. Reputations were built here, and tonight they would be destroyed. Adrian arrived precisely at 7:40 p.m., on time, as always. Vanessa walked beside him, her hand lightly resting on his arm, a gesture that once symbolized unity, now reduced to performance. She looked flawless. A black silk dress, understated but commanding, hair perfect, makeup immaculate. To anyone watching, they were still the same couple, untouched, unbreakable. "Stay close," she whispered softly, glancing up at him. Adrian didn't look at her. "I will," but not for the reason she hoped. Across the room, Lucas Grant stood surrounded by investors, his voice smooth, confident, persuasive. He moved like a man who believed the world was still firmly in his control. Because he didn't know. Not yet. Adrian, a board member, greeted him, shaking his hand. "Glad you made it. Lucas is about to present. This deal could change everything." Adrian nodded. "Yes," he said calmly. "It will." Vanessa's grip tightened slightly on his arm, subtle, but noticeable, because something in his tone felt different. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. Adrian turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. "I've never been clearer." At 8 p.m. sharp, the room dimmed slightly. Attention shifted. Lucas stepped onto the stage. "Good evening." He began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "Tonight, I'm proud to present an opportunity that represents not just growth, but transformation." The screen behind him lit up with sleek visuals, charts, projections, numbers that promised success. People leaned in, interested, engaged, trusting. Adrian stood still in the crowd, watching, waiting, counting. Vanessa exhaled softly beside him. "See," she murmured, "everything's fine." Adrian didn't respond, because fine was about to end. Lucas continued his presentation, moving seamlessly through each point, confident, polished, untouchable, until... "Excuse me." The interruption was quiet, but it cut through the room instantly. Heads turned, conversation stopped, and Lucas paused. Adrian stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, every movement controlled. Adrian, Lucas said, forcing a smile. Didn't expect you to. I'm sure there are a lot of things you didn't expect tonight. The tone, calm, even, but unmistakably different. A ripple moved through the crowd, subtle tension, curiosity. Vanessa's breath caught behind him. Adrian, what are you doing? She whispered, panic threading through her voice. He didn't turn around. I believe Adrian continued, his voice now, carrying clearly across the room. That before we discuss investment opportunities, we should address credibility. Lucas's smile tightened. I'm not sure this is the right setting. It's the perfect setting. Adrian gestured once, and the screen behind Lucas flickered. The presentation disappeared, replaced by something else, a document, clean, structured, financial records. Lucas's expression changed, just slightly, but enough. What is this? Someone in the audience asked. Adrian stepped forward again. This, he said, is a series of transactions tied to offshore accounts connected to Mr. Lucas Grant. Murmurs spread. Faster now. Louder. Lucas's voice sharpened. This is inappropriate. You're misinterpreting. I'm not interpreting anything. Adrian cut in. I'm presenting verified data. Another click. More documents appeared. Emails, transfers, timelines, patterns. The room shifted, from curiosity to suspicion. Vanessa stepped forward now, her voice low but urgent. Adrian, stop. Please, this isn't the way. Still, he didn't look at her. Some of these transactions, Adrian continued, raise serious ethical concerns. Others may raise legal ones. Lucas stepped down from the stage now, his composure cracking. You're making a mistake, he said through clenched teeth. You think this won't come back on you? Adrian met his gaze. Cold, unmoved. I'm counting on it being examined thoroughly. Another shift. The screen changed again. This time, it wasn't financial. It was personal. A photograph. Vanessa and Lucas, together. The room went silent, completely. Vanessa's world stopped. Her body froze. Her mind, unable to process the sudden collapse of everything she had tried to contain. No, she whispered. Another image, closer, clearer, a video. The two of them entering a hotel, side by side, undeniable. Gasps echoed across the room. Whispers turned into open conversation. Eyes turned, judging, analyzing, condemning. Adrian! Vanessa's voice broke as she stepped forward, her hand reaching for him. Please, don't do this. He stepped away. Just enough. You said it didn't mean anything, he said calmly. His voice wasn't loud, but in that silence, everyone heard it. Vanessa shook her head frantically, tears forming. I was wrong. I panicked. I didn't. You said it was a mistake. Another image appeared. Another date, another location. 8 times, Adrian continued. The number landed like a verdict. Lucas tried to speak again, but his voice was drowned out by the room, by the shift, by the collapse. Investors stepped back. Conversations ended. Phones came out. Reputation gone. Vanessa dropped to her knees, right there, in the middle of the room, in front of everyone. Adrian, please, she cried, her voice breaking completely now. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Just stop, please. But he didn't, because this wasn't revenge. This was truth, unfiltered, unprotected, unstoppable. Adrian looked down at her. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with something far more devastating. Clarity. You asked me not to do something we couldn't undo, he said quietly. A pause. This is that moment. Behind them, Lucas stood alone, completely exposed, no control, no narrative left to shape. Security began moving. Voices escalated, the event destroyed, and at the center of it all, Vanessa remained on her knees, crying, broken, seen. Adrian turned away, not rushing, not hesitating, because there was nothing left to say. The illusion was gone. The truth had taken its place, and under that truth, everything they had built had collapsed. The aftermath didn't explode. It unraveled, quietly, publicly, permanently. By morning, the story was everywhere. Financial misconduct, ethical violations, scandal. Lucas Grant's name spread across headlines like a cautionary tale. Investors pulled out. Partnerships dissolved overnight. His firm issued a statement within hours, cold, clinical, distancing themselves completely. By noon, he was finished. Vanessa's collapse was different, more personal, more humiliating. Because while Lucas lost his empire, she lost her identity. Her phone didn't stop ringing. Friends, social circles, invitations, disappearing as quickly as they once appeared. Messages flooded in, not concern, curiosity, judgment, screenshots, clips from the event, her face and her knees looping endlessly across social media. By evening, she turned her phone off. The penthouse felt colder now, larger, empty in a way it had never been before. Vanessa stood in the middle of the living room staring at the same city skyline that once felt like a symbol of their success. Now, it felt like a reminder of everything she had lost. The door opened behind her. Adrian stepped inside. Calm, composed, unchanged. She turned immediately, hope and desperation colliding in her expression. "Adrian," her voice broke on his name. He didn't respond right away. He set his keys down, removed his coat, moved through the space like it no longer belonged to him. "I saw the news," she said quickly, stepping toward him. "Lukash is done. Everything's gone." "Adrian, you didn't just expose him, you destroyed him." A pause. "And me." Adrian looked at her then, not harshly, not coldly, just clearly. "You destroyed yourself," he said. The words didn't hit loudly. They settled, heavy, unavoidable. Vanessa swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. "I know," she whispered. "I know I did, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life, but please." She stepped closer, careful, like approaching something fragile. "Please don't let this be the end." Adrian didn't move, didn't step back, didn't step forward, just stood there watching her. "I've been thinking," she continued, her voice shaking now, raw and unfiltered, "about everything, about us, about what I did, and I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking anyway." Tears filled her eyes, real, uncontrolled. "I'll fix it," she said. "I'll spend the rest of my life fixing it. I'll rebuild everything. I'll be honest, completely. No more lies, no more secrets, just give me the chance to prove it." Silence. Adrian walked past her, slowly, deliberately, and for a moment she thought he was leaving, but he stopped, just a few steps away. "You don't understand something," he said quietly. Vanessa turned toward him instantly. "I do," she insisted. "I understand everything now. I was selfish. I was careless. I took you for granted." "No." The word stopped her. "You understand what you lost." Adrian continued. "Not what you did." Her breath caught. "I know what I did," she whispered. "Do you?" he asked. He turned to face her now, fully. "Then, tell me," he said. "Not the version that sounds better, not the version that makes you the victim. A step closer. The truth." Vanessa hesitated, because this wasn't about survival anymore. This was about exposure. "I betrayed you," she said slowly. "How I lied?" She continued, her voice trembling. "I manipulated you. I made you doubt yourself. I chose someone else over you, over us." Adrian watched her carefully, and she closed her eyes, because she knew there was more. "I kept choosing him," she whispered, "even when I knew it was wrong, even when I had chances to stop." Her voice broke. "I didn't just make a mistake." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I made a decision, over and over again." Silence filled the room. Adrian nodded once. "Good," he said. Vanessa's eyes opened, a flicker of hope, dangerous, fragile. "Then, we can fix it." She asked, her voice barely holding together. "Now that everything's honest, no." The word landed harder than anything before. Vanessa froze, completely. "No," she repeated as if the word itself didn't make sense. Adrian's expression didn't change. "You think honesty fixes betrayal," he said calmly. "It doesn't." "Then what does she ask?" desperation rising again. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." Her face collapsed. "Nothing," she whispered. "Yes," he said, "because the moment I needed something from you, you gave it to someone else." She stepped back slightly, shaking her head. "No, no, that's not fair. I'm here now. I'm choosing you now, and I'm not choosing you." The finality in his voice left no space for interpretation, no room for hope. Vanessa's legs weakened. She sank onto the couch, her body folding under the weight of it all. "You can't just walk away," she said, her voice hollow now. "After everything we had." Adrian looked at her one last time. "I'm not walking away from what we had," he said, a pause. "I'm walking away from what you turned it into." Tears streamed down her face now, uncontrolled, endless. "I love you," she whispered. Adrian held her gaze, and for the first time, there was something there. Not love, not anger, memory. I know, he said quietly. A beat, but it wasn't enough for you to stay loyal. The truth settled between them, final, irreversible. Adrian turned, walked toward the door, each step steady, certain. Adrian, she called out one last time. Broken, desperate. He stopped, but he didn't turn around. Please. A long silence followed. Then, you asked for another chance, he said, his voice calm, unshaken. This is mine. And with that, he walked out. The door closed behind him, softly. But this time it didn't echo, because there was nothing left to break. Vanessa sat alone in the silence. No audience, no illusion, no control, just the weight of her choices, and the realization that some things once lost never come back. Outside, the city moved forward, unchanged, unforgiving, and Adrian. He didn't look back, because he hadn't lost anything. He had simply chosen to stop holding on to something that no longer existed.